Welcome, and we're so glad that you're here for another mental health and wellness chat. I'm Brittany, and I'm one of your VC Counseling Center counselors, and I'm here with a very special guest today. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Brittany Cervantez, and I am here in the Advising, Counseling, and Support Services Department, representing the support services aspect.
Of things, yeah. And today we're going to have real conversations about the emotional challenges students face and discuss navigating them. So today we're going to talk about a reality that many students quietly face, choosing between textbooks or groceries. Struggling to meet basic needs like food, housing, and supplies is a lot more common than you would think. But the stigma around asking for help keeps too many people silent. So today we hope to unpack the shame, share resources, and talk about why seeking support is actually a strength and not a weakness. So I'll start off with a vague question for you here, Brent. Why is it often so hard for students to ask for help when they're struggling to afford stuff like housing, food, or textbooks?
So I think that I would be wrong to try to give you one answer because there is no one blanket answer to cover all of the different people. I think I always tell students when we're working with them, everyone is unique. That means we all face unique challenges. So I think that it's pretty multi-layered for many reasons. I keep going to culture because I think about like the culture of where a student lives. So, the town that they live in, the state that they live in, or even just, take it home and like what does that home life look like for you? So again, I keep going to culture, but there's so many different things and I guess from my experience, my background's in social work, so we had a concentration in working with Hispanic families, and so I'm also Hispanic. Um, but I also think about, like, again, culture, like, Hispanic families, like, we know from data even too that Hispanic families are known for, whatever's happening in your family, in your unit, you're gonna keep that within your unit, and you're not
Yeah.
really gonna share that with other people, especially people that you don't know. So that's kind of my take on it. Again, I can ramble on about all the things, but really I think that it's hard because of everybody lives unique lives, and you kinda have to respect that, and of course, there's just a lot of stigma in general in outer society on asking for help, pull yourself up
Mhm.
by your bootstraps type of thing.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking even while you were talking is, even regardless of culture, I feel like at least here in South Texas specifically where I've always lived in my life, I feel like there is a lot of stigma around asking for support services in that way, and I could see that being a big deterrent for people and asking. And even another thing that I even see, our two areas are very closely related and
Mhm.
overlap a lot.
Yeah.
And a big thing that I see is a lot of times people have this perception that they basically have to be homeless with absolutely no food before it's appropriate for them to even ask for help. That, like, this desolate situation is the only time that it's appropriate to ask for help, which is absolutely not true. So, yeah, and that was my next question. Can you speak a little bit more to any stigma that you've noticed around asking for help with food insecurity or other basic necessities?
Yeah, and I wanna bring up the point that you just mentioned about students feeling like, "Oh, there's somebody worse out there," and I think that is a very common thought,
Mhm.
um, for students, to feel like, I don't wanna be taking from somebody who really needs it. And so I always have to emphasize to students, like, you are a student, you are a person, we all have needs. If you need it, and that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
but as far as the stigma, I think that there's just I think and I don't know if we're gonna have to touch on this later, but I just think that there's a lot of, like, stigmatizing language where it's, sometimes they might hear from an instructor in class or, out in society or, like, online, something that says from someone like, "Oh, well, when I was in college, I was a struggling college student, I ate ramen," like, that's just part of being a college student, like,
Yeah.
trying to normalize struggling, which, in some aspects, yes, you are going to have to prioritize. You're really going to have to budget. And there are some things that you're like luxuries you're not going to be able to have, but that doesn't mean that you need to be figuring out, like, how am I going to have my next meal?
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, that's I can talk on and on about all this stuff,
Hey,
but
that's what we're here for today.
yeah.
Ultimately, we yap on here. That is what we do.
Okay.
So what do you wish the students knew about asking for help?
Yeah, so I think luckily for us here on our campus, a lot of our instructors, faculty, employees, whatever, they really try to refer out our students and let them know of the services. So um, I just want people, like students, to know, like, there are other ways. If you're kind of nervous about like having a face-to-face conversation, a lot of the ways that you can reach out to us are through QR codes or emails. And so if, find a way that's comfortable for you, or find maybe a friend that you feel comfortable talking to, a friend or a family member, and maybe just have somebody else to talk it out through and work it through. So if you don't feel comfortable going to a counselor yet or coming to support services, have someone to talk to about what's going on, and maybe they can help point you in a direction to get some support.
So I feel like a lot of times on campus, even staff who may be listening to this, we see the results of your work, or we see maybe a single student who works with you and then has a success story. But I feel like something that we don't really get a lot of information about from you is, what does a typical day look like? I mean, and I know we have students that are interested in social service type work too.
Mhm.
So I thought this would be interesting to ask of, as support services coordinator, what is a typical day for you?
Every day is different, but in our little niche, right? It's me, support services coordinator, and then Christy Henry is the support service assistant. So, um, for me in particular, we will help with case management, meaning that a student has reached out in some form or fashion. We know of a student who has reached out to someone who needs help, and at that point, we're really just connecting them to different resources. That's in a nutshell what we are supposed to do. But behind the scenes, I am working with different departments, with community agencies, researching and trying to find ways, like, what are other resources out there that VC can tap into, which in turn we can provide to our students. So
Yeah.
I'm constantly working to figure out what else is out there, what else can I know so that I can help the students. And of course we have events and things like that, but it's a lot of research, it's a lot of connecting with different stakeholders to make sure we can get as many resources and knowledge information to share with our students.
Yeah. And sharing the same suite with support services here for a while now, I can vouch to just how often you're running around at 2,000 miles an hour at any given moment.
Yeah.
It's like a game. When does she sit down throughout the day? Spoiler, it's not very often.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so whenever you do have a student that engages for some type of resource or support, what are some how do you determine who qualifies for basic needs assistance?
So I guess I'm trying to think about the best way to go about this. But if somebody needs some sort of basic needs assistance, I would say most people that come to see us, we will never leave them with nothing. Like, they will never leave empty-handed. That's
Yeah.
that's my thing. I always tell, like, our JP's markets student workers, I tell Christy that I really want to emphasize that if we can't give you like money in hand, or because I physically can't do that, but if I can't physically give you anything to make you feel better at that time, there's always some kind of resource or something that they can tap into. And I hope I'm not straying too far from the question.
Oh no, it was just, how do you determine who qualifies?
Yeah. And I guess to be more specific, a student, we will help anybody. Like, we even help people who are considering to be students, right? Because they're trying to navigate the college system. I don't know what to expect. I'm, a mother. Like, what do you offer? So we help, like, student people who anticipate joining the college. But as far as like resources in hand, maybe need transportation or childcare, you do have to be actively enrolled in classes. So meaning, like, you have been enrolled, you have begun classes. Most of the resources that we can provide you that are tangible, you will need to be actively enrolled in
Yeah.
classes.
Well, and on a similar note, even for students who maybe are listening just out of curiosity and maybe don't fully understand what support services do you offer? What are some of the most common needs that you're asked to support? Housing, food, transportation, or is it something else on campus?
I think that that pretty much hits it on the head is people I think are just needing things to supplement their income, because being a college student, you're having to, you can't work as often, or, you're having to really sacrifice some things to afford the daily living. So, common things, of course, are housing. People in general, not just our students, but y- all over, it's really hard for people to make rent every month or pay that utility bill, or hey, because I'm choosing to have my car to get to school, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have money for groceries this week. So um all the basic needs, food, transportation, housing, healthcare also. I mean, people, you're in college, um people have healthcare needs, glasses or needing to see a dentist. So on top of my head, those would probably be some of the bigger challenges, most frequent, and then of course childcare.
Yeah. So, basic needs support is something that is relatively newer on college and university campuses. Same thing with, I mean, counseling centers, I guess, have maybe been around on college campuses a little bit, slightly longer, but we're both kind of in this new wave of colleges and universities offering supports to students that are outside of just traditional academic supports, right? So, I mean, obviously, we're biased. We both work in this field, but why do you think it's important for colleges to continue or to even offer services like this? Why do we exist, basically, I guess is what I'm looking at.
Yeah. And this is a very important point, for students and faculty or employees, whoever it may be. Um, I think what I want to start with is, what is a college student? Um, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of literature that mentions that the college, initially when colleges were created, they weren't created for the modern college student that you see today, right? So you see parenting students, you see first generation college students. So I think we really just need to talk about like why our services are important for the modern college student. What does that look like? Um, and really, I think it's important because the data even tells us, there's a lot of institutions or agencies also that are helping collect the data to show what are the needs. The need is there.
Mhm.
And for instance, I always point back to Trellis Strategies. They started doing a financial wellness survey, and in 2023, they conducted surveys across hundreds of Texas community colleges. So when they conducted that survey, they were asking a lot of basic needs questions, mental health, and so forth. In that survey, going back to like what is the modern college student, 31% of the surveyors, which was about a little over 3,000, um, indicated that they were parents, caregivers, or a legal guardian.
Mhm.
So really just taking time to think about that again, over 30%, that's a big whopping number.
That's a big chunk, yeah.
Yeah. So I think again, just putting it into perspective of, the needs of students like now, modern college student is different than what it was 50 years ago or whatever, 100 years ago when colleges were first created. So I think it's important that colleges keep up with what is the need and the reality of the students that we help.
Yeah. And helping people get to graduation at the end of the day, because that's really the goal of anything about the college system is how do we help students be successful and graduate and get their higher education or the job that they're seeking at the end of the day. And like you said, it sounds like the modern student, these are the needs that need to be supported to be able to reach that goal at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah, and it's just unfortunately sometimes, not sometimes. I mean, unfortunately, it is just the reality. Again, we have so much data. Victoria College, in particular, we were fortunate enough to be able to conduct a hope survey. Again, another institution that helps us really back up why our counseling and support services are important on college campus. And in 2023, we conducted our own hope survey just for our Victoria College students. And at that time, 59% of all the students we surveyed indicated that they had one or more basic need insecurity. 59%.
Mhm.
So to us, I mean, Brittany's like, but like, because we see it every day.
Yeah.
So, but I just want to emphasize to the listeners, like, this is like reality. And I think also I'm hoping sharing this information helps normalize help seeking, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're a college student, you're listening to this, you're not alone. There are a lot of students who are also struggling, just trying to get by. Obviously, you're in college, trying to do better for yourself. And so just know that you're
Mhm.
not alone and there is help out there.
Yeah. Normalize help seeking and normalize the fact that more than half of your peers at this college are also in the same exact boat or very similar boat. That it's not this rare thing that happens to, two people at the entire campus. I mean, this is the majority of the campus.
Yeah, exactly. And, I keep going because I'm also the parenting liaison. So I keep going back to parenting data. But, going back to Trellis, I just want to touch on those basic needs and securities. That Trellis survey that they did in 2023, parents 76% of parents identified being basic needs and secure. And then our counterparts, non parenting students, were at 58%. So, again, both very high
Yeah.
numbers. And it's just important to highlight and be transparent about the realities.
Yeah. And I mean, like we talked about earlier, too, there's this huge connection between mental health and basic needs assistance. And our two jobs overlap a lot where we end up referring to one another a lot of the times because it is so interconnected. And
Mhm.
I guess, given that you're the expert on this area in the room, what does chronic scarcity, or for you guys listening, chronically not having enough resources to meet your needs, what does that do to the brain's ability to focus, retain information, show up to class, basically function through college? How does that impact us?
Yeah, I mean, many of you probably have already taken, our basic psych classes and you know about Maslow's hierarchy. And I mean, when people are constantly stuck in that fight or flight, they are just trying to survive and get through the next day. So I think, again, how can a student who is trying to figure out how I'm going to feed myself, how am I going to get to class, how am I going to afford this textbook, they're going to have trouble trying to sit down in front of their desk and start studying or even starting getting organized for their class because
Mhm.
they're so fixated on just surviving and getting to the next day.
Yeah, how do you just not worry about that? You don't. It occupies a portion of your brain space. And then, yes, I mean, whenever we're in a state of chronic scarcity, incredibly challenging to be able to memorize, retain, or retrieve information for an exam or a final exam. I mean, and like you said, it can make it hard to show up to class because, if I'm struggling with finances, maybe I don't even have gas money, so I can't even come to class. And then I feel like most people might be insecure about being direct with their professors about what's going on. So, I mean, all this to say, it's absolutely understandable. And, there's always also that mental, emotional fatigue of just trying to seem fine and regulate that to everyone
Mhm.
around you while everything underneath feels like so unstable at the end of the day.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, to your point, I think it's just important again, like I'm hoping that all this information may be new, may not be new, but again, I'm just hoping that it's going back to the point of this is normal. You are not
Mhm.
alone. And please just let us know if you need any help.
Yeah, and grounding back in data here too, students struggling with housing or food insecurity have been found to be more than twice as likely to experience severe anxiety or depression. And unmet basic needs are directly linked to higher stress, anxiety, depression, and lower academic performance for a lot of people. And like we've talked about, access to food, housing, academic materials, sometimes those can relieve mental health symptoms. And we see this a lot too, even here in the counseling center. Sometimes we'll have students come in, maybe from a professor referral where a professor is concerned about a student. And when we sit down with counseling, we recognize, there's a lot of unmet basic needs here.
Mhm.
So we'll make a referral over to Britt, and it's confusing because we're both Brittany's, but we'll make a referral over to Britt's office so that she can help kind of start working on a plan to address that. And a lot of the times, we find that after basic needs are met and things kind of settle down, mental health symptoms significantly improve for some people. So this can be something to reflect on too of, do I have unmet basic needs, and maybe engage both services at the same time? Because all of Cervantez's services are also 100% free so long as you're an actively enrolled student. So definitely engage that if it's something that you need. So Britt, what's something that you wish more people understood about poverty and basic needs?
That's a good question. And again, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to this, but my perspective is that a lot of times that I guess I'm looking at our community, there's a lot of generational poverty, and people are really just trying to get out of that. That's why they're in college and they're trying to educate themselves. But it's really hard to get out of old patterns that you grew up with. Um, and so I think that, again, us offering our services, referring out, helping students get maybe financial education, like how to really understand how to budget and, also just knowing, like, because again, I'm talking about generational poverty. I think, again, people who might be coming from that aspect, they will be more unlikely to reach out for support, I guess, because they're like, well, I grew up with this. And so I'm trying to stay away from SNAP. I'm trying to stay away from,
Mm.
Medicaid or whatever it may be. But, that's the whole point. You're in college, right? So,
Yeah.
um, I just think that I think it's important for people to know, like, there is no one reason why somebody is in poverty. And it's very multifaceted, multi-layered, and we really shouldn't judge, because we just don't know what led up to where, how or why students are where they are, why they're needing
Yeah.
help. So,
We don't know what led up to someone's situation. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, okay, before we wrap up today, Britt, is there anything else that you want to cover in terms of like brief outline of what the services are or that you want students to know that might be listening to this?
Yeah, so just kind of a brief overview. If you haven't heard about support services, I hope you learned a lot today. You can find us in the Student Services building. We also have our JP's Market, which is a free pantry for our students. You can go in and get 10 food items, 3 non food items every week. So it's pretty cool. I think a lot of people, it's starting to pick up traction. We're trying to get rid of that stigma, letting students know, like, hey, like, whether you need something to make dinner for tonight or you just dropping in and get a hot pocket to eat in between classes, please stop by and, look at it, give it a shot. Um, and if you want to meet with us, we've got your back QR codes all around campus. Right now, we're using our partnership with Single Stop to help students learn about those long-term federal benefits, state benefits that can help supplement their income. But of course, we will connect you with internal resources on campus and any community resources. So definitely visit our website as well. We have a lot of the resources we refer to on our support services page under students on the VC webpage.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today in your go-to space for honest conversations about mental health and well-being. We're your hosts, Brittany and
Brittany.
crack me up, sorry.
Sorry, I try to go by Britt, actually.
And we're glad that you spent part of your day with us. Remember, taking care of your mind is just as important as taking care of your body. Be kind to yourself, reach out if you need support, and know that you're never alone. So until next time, take care and take a deep breath.